We purchased our Tesla Model Y long range in December 2023 and transferred our free unlimited supercharging from our 2015 Model S 85D over to our new Model Y. If you haven't already seen that video when we took delivery of our Model Y, I'll put a card above so you can go and watch the ordeal that turned out to be. Do we regret the purchase? Nope, it's been as amazing to own and operate as our Model S has been over the last 5.5 years. Over that time, I've made annual ownership cost videos of our Model S, and I'm going to continue that for the Model Y, as well as a battery health report and general stats of how it's been working out for us. By the end of 2024, our Model Y had 22,277 miles on the odometer. I honestly didn't expect to put that many miles on it in its first year, but it happened, and we made many awesome memories putting those miles on it. Of those 22,000 miles, 71%, or 15,877 miles, were driven while on 7 different road trips over 61 days that we took the Model Y on in 2024, most of which I'll be publishing videos about in the future once I can get them edited. The longest of those road trips was 7,168 miles from Utah to Key West, Florida, over 3 weeks. Over the 22,277 miles we put on our Model Y in the first year, it used 7,661 kilowatt hours of electricity to power that distance, which comes out to an average of 344 watt hours per mile. Tesla doesn't publish the rated watt hours per mile that they base their range estimates on, but based on the graph in the vehicle and online forums, it looks like they calculate from 230 watt hours per mile. In TeslaFi, this drive was the closest to 100% efficiency, and it points to 230 watt hours per mile at 100% efficiency. Our energy consumption is much higher than that, and the main reason is that our Model Y is primarily used on road trips being driven at highway speeds, which require more energy to keep up with the flow of traffic at higher speeds, which is typically 70 to 80 miles per hour on average. I use TeslaFi.com as my data logger for both our Teslas. It connects to the Tesla API and records tons of data that Tesla doesn't provide to us. I'll include a referral link in the description below that gives a free month trial if you want to check it out for yourself. This graph shows all the drives over 10 miles long during our Florida Keys trip and what our efficiency was during different speed groupings in 5-mile-per-hour increments. Obviously, efficiency decreases the faster you go, and clearly we don't worry about driving at efficient speeds. Keep in mind, for this entire trip we had a roof box on the top of the vehicle, so that's reflected in these efficiency numbers too. One of the big advantages of the Model Y is for road trips because it charges so much faster than our Model S does. If we can charge at V3 superchargers, then driving efficiently isn't really that important because we can recharge the batteries so quickly. Also, for what it's worth, the average charge speed at V2 superchargers is faster in our Model Y compared to our Model S. So we have no reason to be concerned about our efficiency unless we're trying to drive a particularly long stretch between superchargers in remote locations. The roof box was on the top of our Model Y for half of our road trip miles, and another long trip I had my Talaria e-bike on the trailer hitch bike rack. So of the nearly 16,000 miles of road trips, we had large obstructions on the outside of the vehicle for 9,213 of those miles, or 58%. In 2024, we drove from Utah to Missouri 3 times with our whole family. One of them was with the roof box, and the other 2 didn't have any luggage on the exterior of the vehicle. To give you an idea of range reduction from the roof box, look at the 75 to 80 mile per hour column in this graph, which shows our efficiency was 57.7% with the roof box. Then we did the same drive again in July, but without the roof box, and for that same 75 to 80 mile per hour speed category, the efficiency was 70%, or 12.3% higher. Then we did the drive again in November when the weather was cooler and closer in temperature to the March trip. The efficiency for the same drive, also without the roof box, was 69.7%, or only 0.3% lower than the July efficiency at 75.8 miles per hour speed. In our case, it appears the roof box lowers the range by about 12%. We could get more into the details of range reduction at varied speeds, but I'm going to let you do that based on these graphs if you care to do so. Our Model Y didn't get high efficiency when we were driving around town where we live either, because I often used it with our trailer hitch bike rack to transport my Talaria e-bike around going on rides in Utah, as well as on a trip to Nevada. Then there's the trailer towing, which was never long distances driving, but there were many local trips where I towed our small utility trailer for various errands. This energy consumption figure of 344 watt-hours per mile is for all of the miles, both road trips and local driving. Clearly, we were never at any point during the year driving for extreme efficiency. I will say, though, that the only way to get the 330 miles our car was rated for when we purchased it would be to drive very slowly around town for the entirety of the battery, which, in my experience, is likely only going to be taxi, Uber, or Lyft drivers. To be fair, a couple of weeks after we purchased our Model Y, Tesla lowered the rated range on their website to 310 miles, which I think was due to a change in the way the EPA calculates the range. In any case, 310 miles is more realistic for around town driving, but in our tens of thousands of miles of high-speed highway driving, expect your range to be more like 200 to 250 miles, depending on how fast you drive and a multitude of other factors like exterior accessories. As a point of reference, TeslaFi has a report specifically showing the longest drives, and as you can see, our longest ever in the Model Y was 214 miles from Evanston to Rawlins, Wyoming, where we did not have the roof box on top, but we did have the roof rails installed and not carrying anything. Also, you can see the ambient temperature was ideal and the overall elevation change was minimal, but there was a lot of up and down throughout the drive. On a prior trip driving the section of I-80 from Salt Lake City, Utah to Rock Springs, Wyoming, we used the most of our battery in one drive, using 97% to drive 203 miles at an average speed of 65 miles per hour, and with the roof box on top. The main difference on that drive from our longest ever drive was the total elevation gain of 1,616 feet. In that particular case, my motivation for driving so slowly to get farther was it was the first drive of the day, starting at about 5:14 a.m., and I wanted my kids to stay asleep as long as possible, and they always wake up when we stop. The reality is, when it comes to max range, the vehicle has a max, but you need to actually stop at a charger before you reach that vehicle max. So your max interval is the car's max range minus the closest supercharger location to that upper limit of your vehicle's battery capacity. In high supercharger density areas like California or Florida, you can get really close to that max range if you want to, but in the areas of the western United States where we drive the most, we often have to use far less than the max size of our battery. But I should also mention, after the first drive of the day, it's not timely to charge all the way up full at each charge stop because the charge rate lowers the fuller the battery gets. Anyway, that's enough about electric vehicle road trip charging dynamics for this video, but if you'd be interested in me making a video with more information about best practices for road trips in an EV, let me know in the comments below, and also post in the comments below your own watt-hour per mile numbers to show additional data points. While the Model Y reports having consumed 7,661 kilowatt hours of electricity, the Tesla app reports 9,009 kilowatt hours were charged into our Model Y over 2024. This isn't a perfect comparison since the all-time history of the car includes 3 weeks in December 2023 when we purchased it, but it's close since we didn't drive the Model Y very much in December after we got it home to Utah from Las Vegas, Nevada, where we purchased it. The difference between 9,009 kilowatt hours charged into the car and 7,661 kilowatt hours consumed to drive the car is a variety of efficiency losses, such as losses of electricity going into, then back out of the battery pack, standby loss while the vehicle is parked, and frankly, I'm not sure what all else, but it's a consideration to be aware of, that electricity consumption is not strictly just what's used at the motors to propel the vehicle down the road. In our particular case, all this electricity was free to us. 81% was from our free supercharging, 16% was via AC charging, but not at home, which for us was made up of friends or family's homes while on trips, a campground, a couple hotels, and the office of the company I work for. 3% was at home, but we have lots of free electricity at home since our solar panels paid themselves off a couple of years ago, and they produced 16,000 kilowatt hours in 2024. In fact, this winter of 2024 into 2025, we are exclusively heating our home with our excess solar electricity, and we haven't consumed any natural gas, which is what our furnace uses. But that's a topic for a different video. Perhaps I'll make a video about that experiment once the heating season is done, as well as how I exclusively charged our Model S from our travel trailer RV solar panels from March through October of 2024. So if you're interested in those upcoming videos, make sure to subscribe to get notified when those videos publish. If you watched the video of when we took delivery of our Model Y, there was a snafu where we ended up having to pay an additional $3,378 in order to be able to transfer our free unlimited supercharging. At that time, I had estimated that we would need to drive 25,000 miles before we would break even on that overage. And since then, supercharging pricing has increased, and as of right now, with 22,000 miles on the odometer, 81% of which being from supercharging, we have now supercharged $2,675 worth of electricity. And that is the exact cost it would have been if we didn't have free supercharging, because I downloaded the spreadsheet from Tesla and calculated the actual costs. And this is that spreadsheet, and I did add in my own column, and that's this one right here, this price and total, I added those in, but the rest of this is all straight from Tesla. And as you can see, basically they have some basic data here in the beginning, and then here it's showing you where the supercharger was located, and then they give you the base kilowatt hours, meaning the amount of kilowatt hours that we pulled from the supercharger. And then over here is the unit cost breakdown. So this is showing you per kilowatt hour that they charged at that particular supercharger at that time that we charged. Now, one thing to note is if you look down here earlier on, you can see that Nebraska used to charge us by the time, and so that was really convoluted to try to figure this out, and I had to add in some extra rows here to do the calculations, because they're showing that there was this amount of charging in the cost tier number 1, or that's the price rather of cost tier number 1 versus 2 versus 3 versus 4, and then over here they have the quantity in minutes of how many minutes we were charging at that quantity, and then I had to do these calculations such as this row right here to be able to determine how much that supercharging session cost. I'm glad that they went away from doing that. You can see up here there was other times that we charged in Nebraska, such as this section right here, and they now charge by the kilowatt hour over there. In any case, you can see here this column for price is where I'm tallying up how much that supercharging session would have cost, and then the column next to it is total, and that's a cumulative total. So if we go all the way down here to the bottom, we can see that the first one was cumulative, was the matching, and then after that it was adding on these 2 supercharging sessions and putting the total here, and that continues the trend all the way up to the top. And that's where I came to this total here of here at the end of 2024, we have now charged $2,674 worth of electricity from Tesla. Interestingly, I noticed that sometime between August 10th and 28th, Tesla changed from rounding to the nearest whole kilowatt hour to billing to the watt hour, which is 1,000th of a kilowatt hour. Normally we'd be charging it far more at home, but I was mad that Tesla did us dirty when we purchased our Model Y. I outlined all of the details in the video I made outlining our purchase experience, but in short, they told us that we would get the inventory discount. Then when we drove 6 hours south to Las Vegas to pick it up, they reneged and charged us an additional $33.78. I want to get my money back from Tesla ASAP, and now we are 79% of our way there. Like I said before, I had estimated it would take about 25,000 miles of supercharging, and at the current rate that we are supercharging our Model Y, 81%, we'll break even on the additional $3,378 that they charged us at 28,131 miles on the odometer. Editor Anthony here. Now, I'm many months later. I didn't get this video out sooner, so I figured I might as well just interject some additional details. We did end up breaking even on that overage that Tesla charged us to buy the Model Y with the price of supercharging at 29,782 miles on the odometer, which you can see here on TeslaFi. We happened to be in Jasper, Alberta, Canada when that happened, and that's going to be a trip that I'll get published at some point when we went through the Canadian Rockies. In any case, we did break even, and now going forward, we have free supercharging. Since so far we've only supercharged 81% of the time, that means we will have taken 22,786 miles of pure supercharging to break even. Now, insert commentary here on the ever-increasing supercharging costs, but that's a topic for a different video. Over the first year of ownership, we've received numerous software updates, certainly more than our Model S got in the same year, since it is outdated hardware. I'm not going to list them all out here, but I do love getting improved functionality over the internet, unlike legacy vehicles. Regarding software updates, Tesla gave us 3 full self-driving trials during 2024 on our Model Y. And the first one started on April 1st, 2024, during our road trip to the Florida Keys, and I was able to get lots of experience testing it for many thousands of miles. I made a video about that, which I will link to in a card above, but in short, I tried to use it as much as possible, but I intervened a lot because I just didn't drive that way I wanted it to, or it was making mistakes. I intervened much more in the city than on the highways. All of the details are outlined in that video. When we got the second trial, I used it as much as I could, but we weren't on a road trip, so I didn't get thousands of miles of experience. We don't use our Model Y a lot around town because we use our Model S for around town driving mostly. But in the experience I did get, I found the driving to be smoother, more assertive, and overall a much better experience. Not perfect, mind you, but a noticeable improvement. Lastly, our third trial began around December 20th of 2024 on version 13.2.2, and it's amazing. I still intervene occasionally, but mostly just due to my own preferences and not because it's making a mistake. I'm very impressed with full self-driving now, but I'm still not interested in paying for it. I could elaborate on my reasoning as to why, but that's a topic for a different video. Now that I've updated you on how our first year went, let's go over the maintenance and ownership costs I've experienced as well as the battery degradation. You can see right here at 9,496 miles on the odometer, we had just gotten back from our Florida Keys trip, and the middle row on the passenger side, the actuator that when you push the button to tilt the seat forward so that kids in the back can get out, stopped working. It was not detaching anymore for some reason. And so I made an appointment on the Tesla app, of course, and went in here on April 16th into the service center, and they evaluated it and determined, well, yeah, it's broken, but we don't have that part. And I'm thinking, why did I make the appointment then? You should have had the part in hand. But they went ahead and ordered the part, and then you can see down here 2 weeks later on April 30th is when I went in. So there's 2 line items for that one problem. So that's why I have diagnosed in bold here and replaced in bold there. And so that was done under warranty, of course, because the car only had almost 10,000 miles on it. Then the next thing I did, which was, I guess, on that same day, is I did a tire rotation, and that was free at Discount Tire. Now, keep in mind, these are the OEM tires that came on the car when it was new, so I didn't buy them from Discount Tire, but they have told me multiple times that they'll rotate tires on any car, that you don't have to have purchased the tires from them. So I've also had them rotate tires on my truck, as an example, and I did not buy the tires from them for the truck, because the tires on the truck came with the truck. I just got the tires rotated at Discount Tire, and something that our Model S never had was this right here, tire service mileage reset. So I'm going to go ahead and do that since Discount Tire didn't, and I'm curious to see it anyway. So it's popping up here, wheels versus tires, and it's saying reset the mileage and then tire season. I don't know why it's asking us for the season, but it's giving us winter or all season or summer, and right now it's the spring, so I'll go ahead and pick that and then hit reset. And now it has a notice here saying limit hard acceleration in the first few minutes of driving to ensure vehicle calibration. So that's interesting, but somehow it's trying to detect the tread depth of the tires. When I had them check it, they said it was at 730 seconds on the front and 630 seconds on the rear tires. And that makes sense. The rear tires wear out more quickly than the front, and so they were down 1/32 more, and that's why you do rotations. So then the next thing that happened was in May. So just about a month later, we were driving down the freeway and got a rock chip on the windshield that was pretty nasty, but not unrepairable. So we were able to get that done. SafeLight did it, and our car insurance paid it with no deductible. So it didn't cost us anything, but the insurance did pay $77. And after that, I actually went ahead and purchased some rock chip repair glue that I keep in the glove box of my cars. And it's so much less hassle and way cheaper to just do it myself. And frankly, it's been working fine because I have gotten other rock chips since then, and I've been able to just repair them so that they don't spread, and sometimes they're hardly even visible after I have done it. Then I did another tire rotation in the fall, so that's now September. We're now at almost 18,000 miles on the odometer, and that was also free at Discount Tire, and now the tires were all at 530 seconds. And then we were on a trip, and we were in Missouri, and now you can see we're at almost 21,000 miles on the odometer, and this is now November of 2024, almost December, and the tire blew out. Like, we're driving down the freeway, it was early in the morning, fairly cold, and just all of a sudden, bam! It sounded like a gunshot. There was a tractor going by in the field next to us. I thought maybe their tire had blown out, but then the car chime happened, and it came up with a warning saying the tire pressure low. I was like, oh shoot, that's us. So we pulled over really quickly, and yeah, the rear left tire had just blown completely, like big old 2-inch hole. No idea why at that time. And so with being a Tesla, not having a spare tire, and we have a tire patch kit in our car, I normally would have patched the tire if it was a smaller hole, but this was not patchable. Luckily, we were actually caravanning with family on our way to something together, and we were in the front of 3 cars. There was 2 cars behind us, and so we called them really quickly, so they kind of knew to expect us on the side of the road, and they pulled up behind us a few minutes later. And they had the normal equipment in their gas cars, so we went ahead and just jacked up our Model Y with their tire jack, get the lug nuts off, pull the tire off completely, put it in the back of one of their cars, and then all of us got in those 2 cars because they had some extra seats, and then we just continued on our way. So it was actually pretty quick once we realized we could do that, that it wasn't much more of an inconvenience to just take the tire with us basically and just continue on our way. And we were going to an event, it was a funeral, really important to be there, and so luckily, we didn't have too bad of a setback. I did actually check with Tesla. I used the app to ask for roadside assistance, and they were going to charge hundreds of dollars. I'll put here on screen the screenshots that I made at that time, but it was pretty cost prohibitive. So we drove down to St. Joseph, Missouri in that case, and went to a Discount Tire in St. Joseph, Missouri, which was in the town we were already going to. And on the way there, I called to make sure they had tires that would fit our car. And I ended up having them install this Cumho Solus Majesty 9 TA91 on that rim and replaced the bad tire, of course. And they were able to do that while we were at the funeral, and then I, mid-funeral, went back and got the tire from them, and now we had the fixed tire with us. And then that night, in the dark, as we were going back north again, and keep in mind the tire had blown right on the edge of Iowa border, right into Missouri, right into Nebraska, in that region. So it was like an hour and a half north of where we were. When we got there, it was dark. But we were able to put the tire back on there on the side of the road. We've actually still had that exact same tire on ever since. So now we've got 6,285 miles on that tire as it stands right now. And that tire was $244. Because of this experience, I thought, man, maybe I should have a spare tire in the car, but it is a lot of space to have a spare tire, even a smaller donut. And this was a pretty rare occasion to have that blow out, I hope. At least in my experience so far, with 6 years of Tesla as it has been, and all my whole life of driving, I've never had a blowout like that. Looking at the hole in the tire, we started to realize that there was an alignment issue where the tire was wearing more on the inside edge of the tire, but it wasn't down to threadbare metal bands yet, so that wasn't exactly why it had blown. And so I have to just imagine it was a random fluke. Maybe we hit a sharp rock at some point in the past driving the car, and it damaged it in that spot, and then this particular morning it just gave up. So that's why this line item exists. That was an anomaly, and so far that's everything that has happened in our first year of ownership of the Model Y and all the maintenance that we've done. I don't have anything here on like filling windshield wiper fluid or windshield wipers, and I'm pretty confident I'm still on the original wipers, and maybe I haven't even topped off the fluid yet. It's possible I have. It's just that's such a low budget, unimportant thing that I do it when it needs to be done, and I maybe haven't put that on here. We haven't needed to do a cabin air filter yet. Basically, it's the seat latch that has gone bad that was covered under warranty, and everything else is just regular stuff, and well, except for the blown tire, but that's an anomaly too. So overall, the maintenance has been very minimal on this car up to this point, and I'm happy about that. Now, something you might notice here is that I have a comment about purchasing 3 more of that same tire, because I thought initially I would need to go home and replace the other tires, because I had heard that Discount Tire requires that all the tires be the same tread depth, or at least within a few 30 seconds of each other, and that's for all-wheel drive cars so that they don't have transmission damage, etc. I went ahead and just drove home, which was about 1,000 miles, and then as I continued thinking about well, it's a Tesla, and so there's no front to back linkage, it's all electric, and so it's side to side linkage on the same axle where tread depth matters. And so then I thought, well, how big of a deal is this? So I actually used Grok to do some research, and I looked up a forum. And I'm not going to bore you with all of this detail, but you can see that Grok goes into quite a bit of detail, and I asked a follow-up question here as well, honing in more on the detail of premature wear due to tread unevenness between tires on the same axle. And we're talking about the differential in this case. Only the differential is where that wear may happen. So jumping down here to the bottom, the conclusion was basically that it would take roughly 50 to 100,000 miles of there being a 4/32nd difference to it before it starts to cause premature wear and potential failure of gears and such. Now the reality is, as it has played out, that this tire is wearing down remarkably fast. Has poor tread life. Like just a few months later, I checked it, and it was already at 7/32, and the other tires were still 4 to 5/32. And now in June of 2025, I'm making this video really late, the tread depth on this tire is at 5/32. The front tires are at 4/32, and that rear right one is at 3/32. So they're actually all within 1/32 of each other, but on the same axle, these two rear tires are now 2/32 apart is all. So this accelerated wear was lessening quickly over time as that new tire was wearing down and becoming the same circumference, or closer to the same circumference as the other tire on the same axle. So I just decided it is maybe causing a little bit of premature wear to that differential, but over the course of 6,000 miles, and that difference is becoming less and less over that 6,000 miles, not a big deal. But yes, that does speak very poorly of this Come Ho Solus Majesty 9 tire. It does not have good tread life. And I'll give more detail about that in next year's video, which I'm going to be making, I guess, in roughly 6 months if I can keep on top of my editing schedule. Now that we've finished with the maintenance spreadsheet, let's jump over to TeslaFi. This is an application that is third party, you pay extra for. It connects to the Tesla API and it stores a lot of information about your car. This is our lifetime drive map for the whole time that we've owned our Tesla. And keep in mind, it does have some extra things on here that were after January 1st of 2025 because I'm filming this a little bit late. So this is current as of June when I'm filming this, and you can see it goes all the way down to the Key West, Florida trip. You can see all that line, that's that trip. And then you can see that the lines are darker where we've driven more often. So we've come across here multiple times, but not all the way down into here. And all the red dots, those are all the supercharging stops that we made on the varied trips that we've been on. So I thought I'd just include that because it's kind of interesting to see the places we've driven so far. And then we can come up here to charges and battery report. And what I've done here is filtered it to the day we bought the car to the end of 2024. So the first year plus a few weeks, I guess, over here. And this shows a estimation of the range of the battery at 100%. Keep in mind the battery management system is constantly evaluating how much stored energy there is in the batteries, and especially when you drive the car a lot and you charge it fully and then nearly fully deplete it, it's measuring all of the electricity going out and then back into the battery, and it's helping it to calibrate and know how much available potential energy there is at any one point in time. And as batteries degrade over time, then it's hopefully updating that successfully. And you can see on this graph, the blue line up here is my battery, and the green line is the range or fleet of other vehicles that are like mine, 2023 Tesla Model Y long range, that are on TeslaFi, that are in similar mileage categories. And so over its life, you can see that originally it was up here at looks like 325 miles of range. And keep in mind, when my car was brand new, it was being touted as being a 330 mile range vehicle. And you can see here at the very beginning, it was estimating 328 at that time. Shortly after we bought our car, Tesla changed the estimate to be in the mid, I think 316 or thereabouts, and instead of 330. And I think that's a little bit more real world, but we're just going off of what they had said originally because that's what TeslaFi is going off of. And so you can see our range actually stayed higher than the fleet for a while here and then plummeted. But you can see we were almost perfectly aligned right here around 12,000 miles. And then we deviated just a little bit, but still pretty close. And then they dropped it together. And so overall, we're pretty matched with the fleet over the first almost 22,000 miles. Now, if we come down here, we can, TeslaFi is breaking this up into a couple of different categories of ways you could look at it. So it's looking at your high range versus low, and then high range versus current, or starting range, meaning when we first signed up for TeslaFi, which was on day one, all the way to the current range. What I did down here is I just said, hey, you know what? It was originally 330 miles of range is what they said. And if we do that based on its current range at the end of 2024, we are at 7.01% loss. So basically 7% battery degradation in the first year plus 3 weeks and 22,000 miles. Now, that might seem like a lot, and it kind of is, but the way the batteries degrade, it happens more quickly when they're new, and then the degradation typically levels off and is much slower. In our Model S, as an example, it's got 147,000 miles on it, and it's sitting at around 9% battery degradation, and here we're at 7 already with 22,000 miles. So there's this huge difference in the speed of the degradation over that time. TeslaFi is a great tool. I like it. I want to show you what my car has been experiencing over the first year of its life, according to TeslaFi. This is also an interesting graph in TeslaFi where it shows your odometer over time. And you can see here I've overlaid our Florida Keys trip, which is something you can do in TeslaFi. You can specify a trip that occurs and the dates that it occurred. And you can look at our odometer, this blue line, and look how it just is going up and up and up and up really fast just while we're on that road trip. We literally put 7,100 and change miles on the car in 3 weeks. So that's why it was going up really fast. And then before that, the car was sitting around quite a bit. And after that, it was sitting around quite a bit. And so it's just kind of fun to see how the road trip affected the odometer so much. Unsurprisingly, but it's fun to see it on a graph. As an aside, this is kind of interesting. You can see on March 22nd, we drove from our house to Rock Springs, Wyoming, to the supercharger there. And that one drive won these 2 records in TeslaFi, which is the most battery used in a single drive and the longest time driving, which is 3 hours and 10 minutes. And we used 97% of the battery to do that to drive. Now, keep in mind, this had a Thule roof box on the roof of our Model Y, plus we were loaded up with stuff as we were going on that Florida Keys trip. And so that's reflected here. So you can see we got 203 miles of range at that time. I, since then, have gone on many other trips, and I feel like with the full charge, with minimal safety margin, we can go about 225 miles or thereabouts, driving about 80 miles an hour. In this case, we were actually driving slower than that for a little while. You can see here the average was 65 because we were doing a lot of elevation gain. That's 1,600 feet, and that's also reflected in this range not being anywhere close to 300 miles of range. I thought this was a fun little anecdote I would share just based on that experience that we had, this being a really long drive getting to the supercharger at 3%. I hope our experience with the Model Y has been helpful, and I have no reservations highly recommending it to anyone. If you're interested in purchasing a new Model Y, please use our discount code Anthony18238, linked in the video description below, to get up to $2,500 off, depending on which model you purchase. Right now, they're offering $500 off of a new Model Y or $1,000 off of a new Cybertruck. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.